I get insecure in their presence and my talking gets a little halting. The insecure person gets even more insecure. Like this person isn't really interacting with, and then it gets back and forth, it gets worse and worse and worse. You're gonna find anxiety at every corner that you come upon because you're nervous, you're making other people nervous, you're supposed to take an action, you hesitate, and then it doesn't go very well because you hesitated. That makes you more nervous, etc. If you're 24 and you realize you made the wrong choice, that's great. Now we can go through a process and you can make a fairly radical shift in your career decision. Well, one thing, just to backtrack a minute here, one thing I left out, the reason why you want to follow this path isn't just because it's some kind of mystical destiny sort of idea. The human brain works best. We learn fastest when we're emotionally engaged, when we're interested and excited by something. The brain opens up, we become like a sponge because we want to learn, and our attention is much deeper, and so we learn faster. So if you choose the wrong career for whatever reason, like you go to law school and you're kind of half listening as the professor is droning on. You're kind of half not involved in it, and so you're not learning fast enough. And if you don't learn fast enough, creativity, which is what we all want, is a function of the intensity of your knowledge, of the information you have absorbed. The faster you absorb information, the more thoughts and associations you create in the brain. It starts going through all the time, and ideas are coming to you. If you take 5 years to learn something, that stuff going on in the brain won't happen. So that's why we want to do it. Okay. So you're going to find out in your career that you are not emotionally engaged. That isn't happening. The gears aren't connecting. You're tuning out. You're not paying attention. And you kind of realize that. Okay, so you have to be able to realize that. And not a lot of people are going through their 20s, for instance, because they're going after a big paycheck. They're unaware that they're actually not really attuned to what they're supposed to be learning. But once you have that moment, it kind of depends on how old you are. So there's not like a single formula for what you should do. So if you're 24 and you realize you made the wrong choice, that's great. Now we can go through a process and you can make a fairly radical shift in your career decision because you haven't wasted, I'm not saying wasted, that's too harsh a word, but you haven't spent 15 years in something not relevant to you. It's only been a couple of years, all right? Let's go through the process of figuring out what you should do and let's kind of change your skill set. Let's start heading towards that direction of what you were intended to do. You can make a more radical shift. But if you're in your 30s, I wouldn't recommend that because you need to make a living. You have learned things, you have learned certain skills. So what I recommend is not a radical shift, but a more subtle shift, heading more in that direction. And that might include keeping the job that you have, but at night going to school or online, learning some new skills that you now can quit. Your plan is to quit this job in 2 or 3 years, but you will have learned things that will allow you to quit and go on to this other path. Or you figure out a way to kind of shift it. So I know a woman, Allison Hope Weiner, I don't know if you know her. She has a podcast. Anyway, she studied law and then she realized that she wanted to be a writer. And so what she did is she went into legal journalism. That was how she made a shift, because she could still make a living. She could become a writer and then she learned true writing skills and then she could maybe write a novel if she wanted to at that point. I think so that's the kind of more gradual shift. If you're in your 40s, it's even more gradual that you have to do. But the thing is, all your life, you've been accumulating experiences. You have to keep that in mind. So even when I was working in Greece, because I landed on the island of Crete one summer and I got very sick and I ran out of money and I was in a hospital and then I came out and I had no money to get back to Paris, wherever I was living. I had to go work in construction, prehistoric period. No internet, nothing. I mean, I could have made a phone call and had money wired, sure, but I was embarrassed. I didn't want to have to involve my parents. I didn't even tell them I was in a hospital. So I'm working in construction and it was a really weird world where the boss was Greek and all of the people working for him doing the construction work were like Australians and Americans and English, all blonde, blue-haired, blue-eyed, not blue-haired, blue eyes. It was like the reverse of here because we were all people who had been stranded. So I was like ripping nails off boards, etc. Man, I hated it. It was the worst job. I know that I'm not destined for doing construction. So the long-winded point of this anecdote is that I learned, everything taught me what I'm good at, what I hate. I know I'm not good with my hands. That only made it clearer to me, etc. You're learning really don't just like say, oh, I did this job, I got nothing out of it. You get something out of everything. And if you're in your 30s, for instance, combining your skill sets, so combining writing with law is very powerful, because we live in a world where you have such access to information that the best entrepreneurs are combining things that nobody ever thought of and starting a kind of business that involves kind of very strange skill sets, but is so unique that it takes off. So never give up, never say that this was wasted time. Nothing is wasted. After I finish a book, I never read it again. I never look at it again. I have no idea. I have no desire to look at it again. In fact, it kind of repulses me. It's like, I created it, get out of me. I don't want to look at it. I'm on to the next thing. So there's no point in the post-mortem. There is a point in things that you've done in life, in your interactions with people, to go through that kind of post-mortem process, to go, what could I have done differently that didn't create this particular problem? Okay? I highly advise that. So if you had a podcast that got you in trouble, then go through that post-mortem process to see what you might have done that caused it, and so you can learn the lesson is extremely important. But that's different from going back and criticizing a podcast that's already been created and it's out there. What value are you going to get? You're just going to be beating up on yourself, as you say. I mean, you could look at it constructively and say, I could be doing it a little bit better, right? It's all in the spirit that you do things in. So you could improve yourself. But my thing with my work is, once the book is published, there's nothing I can do about it. It's out there. And in the process of writing, I've kind of learned already what it was that I didn't do quite right and what I could improve on. So the idea is to get, I think the essence of what we're talking here is, the point isn't to beat up on yourself. The point isn't to make you feel bad about your own work, because that'll work against you. You have to kind of love and have a sense of excitement about the work itself. The idea is that you're able to kind of have some detachment from it. At certain key moments, you're able to look at it from a distance and to look at Jordan Harbinger on the screen and say, he needs to be doing this a little differently, as if you're looking at it from the outside, is very, very powerful skill. So the goal isn't to become so critical of yourself that you can't ever do anything in life. You need to have a degree of innocence about it. But if you have no voice inside of your head telling you that some things aren't really working, a voice that's somewhat like an outsider, then you're never going to be able to improve your work from the inside. Maybe it's I'm Jewish. I'm always kind of criticizing myself, kind of sort of beaten into me. But when I'm writing something, I never get too attached to what I'm writing, because I know that's really dangerous. Maybe it's because this is my 8th book that I'm working on right now. Maybe I've learned that. But I never get too attached to it, because I know that that's going to be very problematic down the road. And I always know. So in the moment after I've written something that's very arduous and I go back to it and I go, this isn't working. Yeah, it's painful, undoubtedly, because we're all kind of lazy by nature. We tied the ribbon, we finished the screenplay, we did the project, it's over, I want to move on. But you don't want to rush to the end, because things can always get better, and your natural tendency is to be in a hurry because you want the product out there, you want all the accolades, etc., etc., etc. But if you develop this voice, if you're able to look at it with some detachment, it ends up becoming kind of an interesting game where you feel like I can always make something better, 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 better. It's kind of a very satisfying feeling to improve something and to be able to say that my first iteration was kind of weak and I've really strengthened it right now, as opposed to sending it out there early and then you have a little bit of doubt and then it isn't quite clicking together and people start criticizing it. So, I can illustrate it with a very simple example. You're at a party and somebody comes up to you haven't met before, or you go up to them and they're kind of nervous and insecure and they're kind of sweating a lot and their eyes are kind of blinking a lot. You find yourself getting very nervous in their presence, right? You start even feeling a bit insecure. Maybe I'm causing that reaction. And that as I get insecure in their presence and my talking gets a little halting, the insecure person gets even more insecure. Like this person isn't really interacting with, and then it gets back and forth, it gets worse and worse and worse. Or the opposite happens. You go up to them, they're very confident, they're very secure in themselves, they're very calm, they have a calm energy. It just calms you down, and the conversation that ensues flows in this very natural, easy way. Then that person feels that you're kind of engaging, they engage more, on and on and on and on. So the idea is that we humans operate on a level that we're not aware of, which is on a non-verbal level. So we pick up the attitude, the vibrations, to use a 70s term, we pick those up from the other person in ways we're not even aware of, influences how we are. So your attitude towards life, you have an attitude, and I call it the way you look at the world. It's a lens. That attitude can be complex, but it usually has a single dominant component. It could be anxious. You're anxious about everything, worried. It could be insecure. People are looking at me strange. Do people like me, etc. Or your attitude can be very adventurous. Everything seems exciting to me. I want to explore there. I want to go there. You're very open to things, okay? So when you have that attitude, it goes out in the world. People sense it in a non-verbal way, in that animal way. They feel it off of you, and then it makes them respond in a certain way. And so if you have that anxious attitude, you're going to create all kinds of situations that are going to feed your anxiety. It becomes what I talk about in that chapter, a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to find anxiety at every corner that you come upon, right? Because you're nervous, you're making other people nervous, you're supposed to take an action, you hesitate, and then it doesn't go very well because you hesitated. That makes you more nervous, etc. So you have to get the idea that you are sabotaging yourself with your attitude. And there have been some amazing books written on this aspect of human psychology that actually were kind of mind-blowing to me, to use another 70s. Things like the Pygmalion effect, which I hope in the next 20, 30, 40 years people study more seriously in sciences and explain. But the idea is, in studies like teachers in schools, if a teacher thinks that the students are good and smart and deserving to go to Yale and Harvard and they're all brilliant, but never says anything about that, it's just they think it has an effect where the students work better, they get better grades, they're more excited. The attitude speaks to them, they feel it. So if you go up to somebody and you already anticipate that they're not very good, that they're not, that they're not going to succeed in life, it's going to create that feeling in them. So you have the power to make people feel a certain way by the attitude that you have. And think of that attitude. So the bad news is you are born with an attitude. There's a genetic component to it. The classic example is an introvert or an extrovert. And the man who came up with that was Carl Jung, the great psychologist. He believed that there was definitely a genetic component in that people are born with a tendency to being introvert or born as an extrovert. And naturally, the parent will have an influence on that. But that is very deeply ingrained into you, that attitude. So that's the bad news, that you're born a certain way. If you're anxious, you're born with an anxious attitude. The good news is that you can change it. It's plastic. It has you can work around the edges, you can soften it, you can make it better. If you're anxious, you're not going to suddenly become this open adventure exploring type person. Okay, but you can become less anxious. You can realize that it's causing you problems, and then you can work to kind of alter this attitude. And so the first thing is you have to be aware of what your attitude is in life and the problem that it's causing and how it's infecting your relationship. And the second thing is to be aware of how you can take small steps to slowly begin to alter this attitude. So I tell people, for instance, who are born very anxious, and I understand that because I have a bit of that myself. It doesn't paralyze me, but for some people it paralyzes them. What I suggest is tomorrow you do something that you're not quite comfortable with. Not too radical. You're not suddenly going to go out naked in the streets running, etc. You're going to do something that you normally, that's a little bit outside your comfort zone. It's a little bit different from what you would normally do. Let's say that's going up to a stranger in the office or at a social affair and engaging them in conversation. I'm like, whoa, I can't do that. Do it, all right? And you'll find, so explore those margins of what you wouldn't normally do that aren't dangerous. That person isn't going to kill you, hopefully, for going up to them. But try these things out. They're going to be able to, you'll see now, I don't need to be so anxious. And that by being open and wanting to talk to this stranger, they started talking to me on a level I've never experienced before. It's exciting, right? So that's sort of, your attitude is like your work of art. It's something you create. You're born with it, but you can change it, is the power that you have. The example I thought that was really weird in the book that I thought was so interesting is this woman, it's a story of a woman who had a boss who was kind of abusive and was always criticizing her, and she didn't know how to react. No matter how she reacted, he only got worse and worse and worse. And a psychologist told her to, when you go into work, think of him as this great guy. She said, I can't do that. No, to listen to me, just go in there and think in your head, he's actually a wonderful person. He's got some problems, some issues, but he's actually a really interesting person. He's very complex. She said, what do you mean? Just do it. She did it, and suddenly he reacted in a way she had never expected before. He was kind of put off by it because he noticed she was acting different. He acted different in there. And so I thought this was really interesting. She never said anything. She only thought it. And this wasn't to 14-year-old students. This was to like a 40-year-old boss. He suddenly went on a different track because he detected something. You have a look of disbelief on it. Well, first of all, you kind of notice you have an overall tenor or an overall mood to you, right? So if you are an anxious person, it's pretty obvious. You don't need like Sherlock Holmes to kind of decipher that for you, right? Whenever when something new or novel comes up, your first reaction isn't, wow, I'm excited. Oh no, I'm nervous. This makes me uncomfortable. How you react to things in a general way, in a kind of a neutral circumstance, circumstance. So you're thrown into some novel situation. You find yourself in a foreign city. Is your first instinct to take all your clothes out and go exploring and finding everything there and getting away from Americans and seeing what the culture is? Or is it to kind of stay in your hotel room and kind of watch, American television or things like that? In certain patterns in your life, how you react to things that are different or new will be extremely telling to whether you're an introvert, whether you're an extrovert, whether you're anxious, whether you're adventurous, on and on and on. So observe yourself in kind of these key moments. I don't think it's rocket science. I think it's pretty clear. I know I am an introvert, that my tendency is I'm more on the shy side, although I've learned to kind of overcome that. And I see that in my social interactions. So you in your room where you're kind of quarantining, you could think that you're Napoleon Bonaparte, that you're wonderful, that you're amazing, that you're so bold. Then the moment you go out in the world, it's extremely different. You realize your weaknesses, your limitations.